Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 115, Nightingale. Sunny could really understand how bad the situation looked from the perspective of the young man with a beautiful voice. The only thing that could be worse than approaching a terrifying dark well while thinking that there's an ancient and utterly evil creature hiding inside was to actually be locked inside the terrifying dark well while thinking that some abominable thing was looking down on you from above. At least Sunny had a chance to escape if things were to turn really bad. The poor guy in the well literally had nowhere to run. Of course, there was still the possibility that all of this was just a cunning act performed by some incredibly horrifying monster. Sunny had to keep that in mind while exploring the other theory. So, if he is indeed a human, how do I make him believe that I'm not a monster? That wasn't a very simple task for Sunny. He had never been good at communicating with people in the first place, and 3 months of complete isolation did not make things any better. In fact, they had made everything worse. Now, even Sunny sometimes felt uncomfortable when talking to himself. What would Cassie say? He cleared his throat. Are you a human? I am too. I am a human, too. We are both humans. Great job, idiot. After that abhorrent attempt, Sunny wouldn't be even surprised to find out that he was not, in fact, a human. Who talks like that? The young man in the well grew silent. Then, he silently said, Yeah, it's definitely all over for me. Oh, well. I had a good run, I guess. Sunny sighed heavily. Stop panicking, you idiot. I really am a human. The owner of the charming voice laughed. Please forgive me if I don't believe you. He was using respectful honorifics, as though recognizing Sunny as an elder. Which was logical, given that he believed him to be an eldritch horror. An eldritch horror would technically count as an elder, all things considered. Sunny groaned inwardly. Why are you using honorifics? I bet I'm younger than you. The young man imprisoned in the well hesitated. Wait, you really are a human? Sunny smiled with excitement, feeling that he was making progress. Yes. I really am. The voice returned a dozen seconds later. How come you're here alone and in the middle of the night? You also don't seem to have any source of light with you. Please don't get angry, Sir Monster, but that's not exactly something a human would be able to do. Maybe you should work on your story a bit more next time you venture out to devour innocent souls. Just a piece of friendly advice. Sunny sighed. Very funny. I'm able to walk around the city at night because my aspect allows me to hide in the darkness. I can also see through it, too. How did you end up in this well, anyway? The young man lingered before answering. How does one usually end up in these situations? A bunch of thugs decided to shake me down for my memories. I politely refused, and here we are. They've been keeping me here for a couple of weeks, trying all kinds of methods to get me to transfer the memories to them. But I must say, their attempts were very clumsy. In terms of knowing how to terrorize people, these fellows are not even anywhere near the laziest of Sasaengs. Sunny didn't know what a Sasaeng was, so he just assumed that it was some kind of a horribly malevolent nightmare creature. The rest of the story was somewhat easy to believe. Of course, it would take a very special kind of fool to choose the ruins, of all places, to keep a prisoner, but thugs were not known for their intelligence. Plus, their plan seemed to have worked pretty well right until the moment they had the misfortune of stumbling onto Sunny. Well. Now he knew what this whole thing was about. Just some tiresome human business. How disappointing. Nephi's and Cassie were also not in any sort of danger, at least not with regard to this mess. The mystery was solved. He had wasted a whole night on this nonsense. I see. Well. Goodbye. With an annoyed sigh, Sunny turned around and began to walk away. However, the owner of the beautiful voice stopped him. Wait. Wait. Are you really human? Sunny grimaced. I am. I've told you already. The young man imprisoned in the well hurriedly asked, Can you maybe get me out of here? Those guys are not coming back tonight, I think. If you help me escape, I'll make it worth your while. Sunny scratched the back of his head, then frowned. In what way? After a short pause, the charming voice returned again, this time somewhat hesitant. Well, You might not know this, but I am quite a rich person. I have a whole stash of soul shards back in the castle. Some might even say that I have a small fortune. Half of it is yours if you get me out of this pit. That's 10 shards, at least. Sunny suddenly got an idea. Of course, he did not need the 10 shards that the young man was offering. The fact that he had these shards, though, that was potentially very useful. If he wanted to avoid unnecessary attention when buying memories with his hoard of soul shards, he would need a suitable proxy. A sleeper with a lot of shards of his own, one that was indebted to Sunny no less, was a perfect candidate. He smiled. Do people know that you have a fortune? The young man answered, a bit of surprise in his voice. Do they? No. Yeah, I guess they do. I am known to spend a lot from time to time. On entertainment, as well as, some other things. I'm a patron of arts, one can say. Perfect. So no one would be surprised if he suddenly begins to spend shards on memories. However, there was a small problem. Sunny could remove the grate, but he had no way of helping the poor guy climb out of that unimaginably deep well. Even if he was to use the prowling thorn, he doubted that the invisible string would reach that far. Its maximum length was not that impressive. And he certainly was not going to climb into the creepy well himself. Plus, he still held a bit of suspicion about the charming young man's identity. He was almost certain that he was human. But the remaining tiny bit of doubt was enough to make his paranoia ring the alarm. After hesitating for a bit, Sunny said, "What's your name?" The melodic voice answered, "It's Kai." Sunny sighed. "Well, Kai, I don't know how to tell you this. But unless you can fly, I won't be able to help you escape." The young man grew quiet. After a long pause permeated with deathly silence, he then said in a strange tone, "I can." Sunny blinked. What? Did he hear wrong? No, that was unlikely. Maybe Kai was just willing to say anything in his desperation to escape. The prisoner of the well chuckled. "I can fly. That's my aspect ability." Chapter 116, Deal with the Devil. Sunny considered Kai's words. An ability that allowed the awakened to fly was not unheard of, but it was rather rare. And here on the Forgotten Shore, where a cursed flood of darkness devoured the world every night, it was nothing short of priceless. Sunny couldn't even imagine how easier it would have been to traverse the labyrinth with someone like Kai by his side. Suddenly, it made a lot more sense why someone like him would possess a small fortune of soul shards. It also explained why his captors were so gentle in their attempts to force the memories out of the young man. He was much more valuable alive. Sunny remained motionless for some time, thinking things over. After a while, Kai spoke again, his pleasant voice tinted with a bit of apprehension. "Well, will you help me?" Sunny sighed and walked back to the dark fissure of the well. "All right. I'll remove this grate, and you can fly out. However, I don't really need your shards. If you want to come out of there alive, you'll have to do something for me instead." The prisoner of the well hesitated, then cautiously asked, "What?" Sunny smiled. "I'll tell you when you need to know. Don't worry, it's nothing serious. I just need help completing a few errands inside the castle. So, do we have a deal or not? If not, I'll be on my way. I've wasted enough time here already." Kai didn't have to think about it too long. Soon, his voice resounded from the darkness once again. "We have a deal." It sounded strangely relaxed, as though the young man had become resigned to fate. Sunny slightly frowned and said, "Great. One more thing, if you break our agreement and simply fly away, I will find and kill you. This is not a threat, just facts. Do you understand?" Kai lingered for a bit before answering. "Yeah, no problem." Sunny gazed into the black cavern of the well and hesitated. He was more or less sure that Kai was human, but had to be prepared to act immediately in case he was not. Following his silent command, the stone saint came out of the shadows and kneeled near the well, grasping the grate with her hands. The steel of her gauntlets scraped against the ornate iron, and with some visible effort, she slowly moved the heavy grate to the side. Sunny shivered as he listened to the wrenching sound of iron grinding against stone. The midnight shard appeared in his hands, and he lowered himself into a combat stance with grim resolve. Whatever came out of the well, he was ready to face it. A few seconds passed, each feeling like an eternity. Sunny was tensely staring into the circle of pure darkness in front of him, waiting to see if he was right to trust the prisoner of the well or not. Then, several more seconds passed. And then a few more. Nothing happened. Sunny tilted his head, then asked with some irritation, "Aren't you going to come up?" After a bit of a delay, the charming voice resounded from the darkness once more, "You see, I just thought of something." Sunny sighed and lowered his sword a little. "What is it?" Kai was silent for some time, then answered with a bit of wariness, It's just that this grate is so heavy that it wouldn't even budge when I tried to move it. It took all 6 of my captors to put it in place, actually. And they were all big, strong men. So." He hesitated. "I know that we have already established that we are both human, and it's not that I doubt your honesty, but would you mind explaining to me how is it that you were able to remove it all by yourself?" The honorifics were back. Sunny cursed under his breath. This guy was even more paranoid than him. He was unwilling to reveal his hidden ace to Kai, but the cautious prisoner left him with no other choice. Glancing at the Shadow Saint with a dark expression, Sunny said, "That thing is too heavy for me, too. But I was lucky enough to get a very strong echo." Kai seemed to suddenly become very curious. "Oh. That is indeed lucky. Very few people in the castle have an echo. I think I know every one of them by name." After a short pause, he added, "By the way, what is your name?" Sunny rolled his eyes and said through gritted teeth, "My name is Sunless." This conversation was entering dangerous waters. Depending on what Kai was going to say next, Sunny might be forced to climb into the well after all. Not to save the young man with a beautiful voice, but to silence him forever. Meanwhile, Kai suddenly laughed. "Sunless? That name does not sound like something only a soul-devouring demon would be called at all. Zero chance of that, right?" After saying that, he laughed again, this time with a hint of desperation in his voice. However, even then Kai's laugh was very pleasant to the ear. More pleasant than his charming voice, even, but Sunny was in no mood to appreciate its melodious sound. God damn it. Sunny rubbed his temples. Why didn't anyone ever trust him? He was such an honest young man. The most honest young man in the world, really. Annoyed, he said in a flat tone, "Very funny. Now, come out of that well before I change my mind." Eventually, Kai stopped laughing and said, "There's no one in the castle with that name. At least no one with an echo under their command. Do you maybe live in the outer settlement?" "Oh, come on." Feeling the pressure of the flaw growing in his mind, Sunny closed his eyes and answered truthfully, "No." Kai cleared his throat. "So. You are someone who walks the cursed ruins alone at night, possesses the strength of at least 6 men, dwells in the darkness beyond the castle walls, and calls himself Sunless. Did I miss anything?" Sunny grimaced. "Not really." For a few moments, there was silence. Then, the prisoner of the well said with a voice full of dark humor, "Would you climb out of this well to meet a creature like that?" Hidden in the darkness of the cursed night, Sunny smiled with a bit of menace and said, "If I was in your shoes, I would. And I think that you should do it, too. Do you know why?" After a small pause, Kai asked with sincere interest, "Why?" Sunny stopped smiling and allowed a cold indifference to seep into his voice, "Because I can put that grate back anytime." Without waiting for Kai's response, he ordered the stone saint to move the grate a little. A moment later, the horrid sound of iron scraping against stones invaded his ears once again. Almost immediately, the prisoner of the well changed his tune, "All right. Wait. Stop." The Shadow Saint released the grate, allowing silence to reign over the lonesome courtyard once again. Kai was quiet for some time, and then said with dejected reluctance, "You'd better not be a demon, all right? Stand clear, I'm coming out." Chapter 117, Cruel Injustice. Sunny felt a soft breeze lightly caress his cheeks, and then something moved in the darkness of the well. Gripping the hilt of the midnight shard tightly, he prepared for the worst. On the other side of the dark fissure, Shadow Saint slowly raised her shield and rested the blade of her sword on its rim. However, they had nothing to fear. A few moments later, a graceful figure appeared in the air, rose above the well, and then gently landed on the stones in front of it. The corner of Sunny's mouth twitched. The owner of the charming voice was, indeed, human. It was a young man wearing a light lamellar armor, with luscious dark auburn hair and mesmerizing green eyes. His well-fitted armor was made out of burnished brown leather, with deep blue embroidered garments beneath. However, for a moment, he wished that Kai actually turned out to be a demon. Because the damn guy not only possessed the most charming voice he had ever heard, but was also drop-dead gorgeous. Honestly, it was simply unfair. Kai was tall, slender, and incredibly handsome. His face was small, perfectly shaped and beautiful, with high cheekbones and flawless ivory skin. His green eyes were nothing short of electric, and his lips were soft and full like. What am I thinking? What's more, he seemed to possess that special type of warm charm that made some people almost irresistibly attractive. Sunny wouldn't be surprised to find out that droves of girls simply fell to Kai's feet every time he happened to casually walk by. Perhaps a few guys, too. Even worse still, the bastard looked like a genuinely nice person, without the smallest trace of arrogance or entitlement on his pretty face. There were playful sparks of humor hiding deep within his eyes, and one could be absolutely sure that when Kai smiled, cute dimples would appear on his cheeks. You couldn't even hate the damn guy. 2 weeks spent in the deep dark pit did nothing to lessen his glamour, too. In short, Kai was the most beautiful person Sunny had ever seen, even compared to other awakened. He looked like one of those screen idols that people love to obsess over, only somehow even more attractive in person. Sunny glanced at himself, feeling a strong desire to grind his teeth in outrage. Well, this is just a cruel injustice, simple as that. Meanwhile, Kai noticed the Shadow Saint's burning ruby eyes, which were the only source of light in the absolute darkness of the night, and flinched back with a paled expression on his face. Oh no. It's a demon after all. Sunny got distracted from his self-pity and blinked. Then, feeling somewhat spiteful, he said, "I'm behind you, idiot." Kai froze, then slowly turned around to face him. Sunny didn't fail to notice that the young man held one of his hands out, obviously ready to summon whatever memory he used as a weapon. Blinded by darkness, Kai couldn't see him, of course. Well, good. Let's not let this fellow know that I'm not as, good-looking as he is for a few more moments. Pretending to be perfectly composed, Sunny asked in a calm voice, "Haven't I told you that I had an echo? It's her over there." "Well, sort of. That is to say, those aren't my eyes." The handsome sleeper hesitated for a few seconds, then said, "Sunless. You really are a human." Up until that moment, both of them were just disembodied voices to each other. But now, while Sunny had already made sure that Kai was not some ancient horror, or at least didn't look like one, the former prisoner of the well was still in the dark, both literally and figuratively. "Last time I checked, I was still human, yes. If you have a memory to produce light, you can summon it and see for yourself." Kai lingered. Won't the nightmare creatures be attracted by the light? Smart and cautious. I like him. Sunny shook his head. Usually, they would, by this courtyard is really secluded. Plus, there are not a lot of monsters in this area. I guess that's why those thugs chose this particular place to keep you imprisoned. With a sigh of relief, Kai summoned a paper lantern that glowed with soft yellow light. Sunny hissed. Arg. Damn. Relying on shadow sense to keep track of the young man's movements, he raised a hand and covered his eyes. Accustomed to the darkness, they weren't ready for such a sudden appearance of light. Of course, Sunny knew that this would happen. He allowed himself to be momentarily blinded to give Kai some sense of safety and better convince him of his human nature. "Oh. Sorry." The beautiful young man lowered the lantern a little and looked up, trying to finally lay eyes on his mysterious liberator. Then, with a bit of surprise, he slightly lowered his head and looked down. "Great, that is not humiliating at all." Kai stared at Sunny for a few seconds and, after realizing that he was indeed a human, offered him a dazzling smile. His smile was as charming as the rest of him. Even the cute dimples that Sunny had imagined would inevitably appear on his cheeks were, indeed, there in all their glory. It was nothing short of obnoxious. "Well. What a surprise. I was almost certain that you will turn out to be a terrible monster. But you aren't. You really are a human, and such a cutie too." Sunny coughed. "Wah. Did he just call me a cutie?" How dare he? I mean. Thanks. What is happening? Meanwhile, Kai frowned. But, Sunless. What? The beautiful sleeper blinked a couple of times. Can I ask something? If you really don't live in the castle or in the outer settlement, then where do you live? Sunny shrugged. I mean, are there many options left? I live in the city. Kai hesitated for a bit, but then, suddenly, a light of realization ignited in his mesmerizing green eyes. Oh! I think I've heard of you. Aren't you the crazy kid that lives alone in the ruins? Sunny stared at him with murder in his eyes. Why does everyone keeps calling me kid? Why does everyone keep calling me crazy? I'm not crazy. With a deep sigh, he answered, indeed, that's me. You can call me Sunny, by the way. Once you get to know me better, you'll realize that I am not, in fact, that crazy. Kai looked at him with doubt. Noticing that, Sunny grinned. He decided to tease the obnoxiously gorgeous young man a little. Of course, with the limitations of his flaw, that was going to require a bit of finesse. Putting too much enthusiasm in his voice, Sunny said, and I don't actually live alone. I have plenty of creatures to keep me company, you might even call them my friends. There's a talking rock that sometimes tells me to do stuff. There's also my shadow, it has a lot of interesting opinions. He stared at Kai with a sincere smile. When the young man's handsome face became a little pale, Sunny laughed. Gee, relax, man. I am just joking around with you. Then he looked down at the shadow and added in a dark, angry tone, they're not really my friends. I actually can't stand that rock, and the shadow and I barely talk these days.